well, thank you everybody for coming to the Confidence Catalyst Utah edition. This is our very first time escaping the dreary Pacific Northwest and taking our show on the road. So thank you so much for being here for this pretty monumental occasion for us. The Confidence Catalyst started in 2017 as a Zoom call where it was an environment, a safe place for women who were embarking on new journeys or trying to figure out what they wanted out of life to share their dreams and be encouraged and supported by those in the audience. It was small, but it was very effective. And the following year it went live in Portland to a room full of people just like you guys. And every year after that, it continued annually in Portland, different venues, different speakers, different stories. And then in 2021, I took the stage there right after moving to Portland. So I didn't know anybody, but it was such a great experience. In 2022, they took a hiatus. My business partner, who's not here, but she's the co-creator of this program, had some personal things. So they took the year off, and then we got together in 2023 and said, let's bring this back, but let's make it bigger and better than ever. And that's just what we did. We brought it back with a coaching element. We brought it back with the live streaming element. And after last spring in Portland, I said, hey, let's take this show on the road. I think we're onto something here. And so we did, and here we are. And the reception, as I've been talking to people all over the country, really, for this program is like, we want to know more. Please tell us when you're coming to our city. So I am a Utah native. My name is April Young. I grew up in Delta, down the road, a couple counties over. I went to St. George for college, stayed there for 20 years, and then hightailed it out of here to Oregon about 4 years ago. So it made sense for me to come back to Utah first. So as our very first non-Oregon location, the Great Beehive State, here we are. So thank you again for coming tonight. Yes. To our virtual audience, thank you all as well for joining us. I know a lot of people wanted to be here tonight, but it's Friday. Let's be real. We all have date night or prior commitments and things that prevent us from going certain places. So we have the option for the live stream. So those of you that are here live, thank you so much for joining us. Those of you that are on the replay, thank you for supporting our speakers. Even though you couldn't be here in person, we really appreciate your support in purchasing a ticket and listening to their speeches at your convenience. A couple housekeeping items so I don't forget later. We have refreshments in the back, as you all probably know. Feel free at intermission to go get some more because we leave on an airplane tomorrow and we don't want to take any of it with us. Over here by the, a garage door? The garage door, there is a promo table. So all of our speakers are embarking on new adventures or really discovering what it is that they love and want out of life. And we've brought this table to allow them to share that with you. So at intermission, afterwards, when you're meeting with them, go over and see what's on the table. We have books. We have 2 authors in the room, 3 actually. Jen, who is speaker number 2, has brought her book. Myself and Dawn Renee, who is our fabulous photographer somewhere in the room. I don't know where she went. We co-authored a book earlier this year, so we have copies of the book here. Everyone has a sign-up sheet, QR codes, so get to know them. There she is, fabulous Dawn Renee, right over there. And connect with them so that you can see what they're up to. Second item of housekeeping business, actually it's number 3, the venue, and I'll talk a little more about the sponsor later, but big thanks to the Tax Hive for allowing us the use of their beautiful space tonight. And I think that's it. Bathrooms are out the door, down that little hall right there on the left, in case anybody needs to know that. All right, shall we get started for real? Yeah, let's get started for reals now. Okay, so the Confidence Catalyst is all about sharing our stories, not the story of who we think people want us to be, or the story of what society says we should be, but the real story. The real stories, the things that happen to us, through us, and for us in this life. And so here we are. And stories for millennia have been a mode of communication for humans. Stories have been used to preserve history, to give instruction, cave paintings on walls, demonstrating how not to be killed by a saber-toothed cat. Survival guides, all of these things come from stories. So why is it then that we all feel like we need to hide those stories of who we are? It's a society thing. So as women, we tend to hide those pieces of us that we think will be judged for, or that might be perceived as too much. I'm here to change that. The mission of the Confidence Catalyst is to empower women to speak up, stand up, share their stories loud and proud. Women have such collective wisdom, such a breadth of experience and knowledge. And the only way we can make an impact on this world is if we get up and bravely, courageously, and vulnerably share it. So tonight, you will get the pleasure of hearing 5 amazing women as they share the story of who they really are. Not the stories of who people wanted them to be, not the stories of what they thought they maybe were supposed to be, but the stories of who they are and what they have been and why they do what they do now. So without further ado, let's welcome our first speaker to the stage. We have Miss Melissa Chipman, who is an artist. She is a very talented painter, and she has traveled the world searching for that thing that really lights her up. Turns out it was art, and it was there all the time, but she didn't discover it until she was 16. She has traveled, and she'll tell you all about this. She has adventured to many places, and she has learned very much about the art of everything. So with her speech tonight, please welcome to the stage, Melissa.
Thank you, April. Is this good length? So, as April said, I'm going to speak tonight about the art of everything. But before I launch into my talk, I want to make an announcement to my friends and family while you're all here tonight. Some of you know that I recently went to Alaska, and while I was there, I got married. What? And not to the person you probably think that I got married to. I committed to myself. So I bought myself an engagement ring to fall in love with me. And then I bought myself a commitment ring to commit to putting myself first. And so when I found out, when I found out about the Confidence Catalyst, I thought, this is perfect, and that's going to be a great way to commit to myself and my goals and my future. So thank you, April, for providing the platform. And as I started brainstorming for this talk, I realized that I actually had a lot of material for a really good book. And so I'm going to take you through the art of everything, of how you can turn your life into a masterpiece. And so it might feel a little bit scatterbrained, but also I have ADHD and I'm just embracing it. So follow me on the journey of my scattered thoughts. But it all started back in high school when I took one of those required electives, and I was joking with my friends, and I'm like, oh, look at me, I'm going to be Bob Ross, I'm taking my first art class. And I started painting and realized that I could paint. And then people just kept encouraging me to keep going with it. And my teacher said, you should take the level 2 class. And so I went on to the level 2 class. And then I did Sterling Scholar. And then I had people buying artwork from me. And then they just never stopped. And so I just accidentally became an artist. And so as I've learned how to paint and refine that skill, I've found so many similarities to life that just keep bouncing back in my head about how we can actually make an art out of life. And what does that actually mean? Like if something's just made, but someone's like, no, they're an artist or there's an art to that, typically that means that they've been able to refine that skill to where it's just like flowy and you just love watching it. Like even on those reels on TikTok or Instagram, and you see guys like throwing stuff onto high shelves because they're just used to doing that same task over and over again. They've created an art out of doing that. And so if you're going to create a good painting, to start out, first of all, you've got to have a vision, right? Got to have some inspiration. And I don't know where I heard it once, probably at a conference, who knows? But someone said to me once upon a time, if you can't see it with your eyes closed, you're probably never going to see it with your eyes open. So you've got to have that vision inside of yourself before you can actually go and start making plans. And I don't know how many here have watched The Secret or read The Secret, right, by Rhonda Byrne. So she talks about how you got to get a vision board and put all your goals on this vision board. And I love that concept, and I was so inspired by it, but I thought vision boards looked really ugly and cluttered. So I decided to put all of my pictures into a saved folder on my desktop and then made that my screensaver on my desktop. And that was across from my bed, and I watched those images roll through every night before I went to bed. And I looked at pictures of Daybreak. It's a community out in South Jordan, and had never lived there, but I saw pictures of that. Then I looked at pictures of the Maasai warrior tribe. I'll talk more about that later. And so I put all these pictures on there, and like an image of this grass hut tree, like on a beach somewhere, and just all these different images and some goals for money and a house. And anyway, so fast forward, I end up getting the opportunity to move into a place in Daybreak from one of my friends. And I, for whatever reason, I had moved in between that, and I never plugged that computer back in. So when I moved into this new place, and I end up plugging that in, and I look at that old screensaver reel, and it was so cool. I was like, oh my gosh, I've actually done all of these things. This is amazing. But we have to back up a little bit. So when I was in college, I started studying art and anthropology. And has anyone here watched Studio C? I figure we're in Provo. There's probably some people who watch Studio C. So it's this comedy skit routine, and in one of their skits, they play the game of life, but it becomes like Jumanji so everything they roll on, it comes to life. And one of the male characters, he spins, and he ends up rolling on getting a college degree, and he's gonna be an artist, and he's like, no, I'm gonna be poor. and then he goes around again, and he spins again, and he gets another college degree, and it's gonna be anthropology. He's like, no, I literally picked the two poorest professions. What was I thinking? And I'm like, yep, that's what I studied. But when I took my first sociocultural anthropology class, I had this professor. He was so quirky, and he'd walk in with a stack of books like the mouse on Cinderella, and he'd just like on his teeth are like on the cheese, and they're all bouncing all over. That was like his books, and he'd just like set all of his books out. And then he would tell us about all of his adventures living in Africa with the Maasai warrior tribe for 17 years. And he planted this seed in my heart that I needed to go to Africa. And so fast forward through a lot of life experiences. My friend Allie, who's here tonight in the shiny dress, she was inviting me on all these vacations, and we went to Kauai, and we went to Florida, and I thought, this is so fun, but like, what do I really want to do? Like, if I died in a year, and I thought, oh, I didn't do fill in the blank. And the first thing that popped in my head was, I want to go to Africa. I haven't gone to Africa. And so I remember just feeling so strongly in my heart that that's what I needed to do. And I made that decision. I was like, this year, I'm going to Africa. That is what I'm spending my money on. And so 2 weeks later, I go to a movie event, and I hear some lady talking out of earshot, and she's like, blah, 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 I live in Kenya. And I was like, oh, I need to get to talk to her. And so we start talking, and next thing you know, 2 months later, I'm in Africa with my 9-year-old son, and she had a 9-year-old as well. And so it was such a beautiful experience because the two of us got to travel around, and I just loved sharing all of that land with him. And I'll never forget the moment when we're driving through the Mal Forest, and it's this dirt road that just sinks down, and I mean, you can tell the rain has just washed out like 2 to 3 feet on some areas, and you're watching women walk down 2 hours to go get water with their donkeys that have the buckets strapped to their backs, and as we're getting finally up to the top in the Jeep, and we finally get to the top of this hill, and there they were, like the whole Maasai warrior tribe from that region were all lined up in their traditional garb with all the jewelry and the cloth, and it was just the most amazing moment to know that, like, I made this happen, and I was here, and just feeling that moment of knowing that you're in the place where you're supposed to be and bringing that dream to a reality, which seems so far away, like literally far away. And I walked down this little walkway with all these people lined up and all these children singing a welcome song, and tears just start dropping down my face. I just couldn't hold it back. It was overwhelming. And that night we went to dinner, and Odie, he was like one of our guides, Maasai warrior leader, and we would go around at night and talk about what our favorite moment of the day was. And he said, my favorite moment was when Melissa started crying because we don't show emotion here in our tribe. And when she started crying, I knew that she loved us. And then that same night, this was beautiful, you guys. You can't buy these moments. Well, I kind of did buy it, but you can't plan it. This other 9-year-old boy that's sitting by my son, he was African, and he looks at my son and he goes, Xander, you need to eat your food. There are children here who don't have food. You need to eat your food. And I was like, oh my gosh, an actual child in Africa is telling my kid to eat the food on his plate. So anyway, but there were so many beautiful moments, and he's running around and playing soccer with kids that have no shoes, and these soccer balls are made out of cloth and twine, and they are happy and just running around like they have no cares in the world. And when we got home from Africa, Xander walked into his room, and I'll just never forget, he literally, like, it was like this rush of abundance came over him. And he looked at all of his toys, and he goes, whoa, I have so much stuff. Because here we just spent 2 weeks hanging out with people who have like a roof over their heads, maybe. And he, on his own, went into his room and he just started pulling out toys, and he collected 2 full huge boxes of toys to go give away. And then contacted our friend in Africa and was like, can I give any of these to your son? And so we ended up mailing a whole bunch over to them. But it was such a beautiful moment for him to appreciate what he had. And that's another point, bringing it back to the artistry, right? We have to look at what we've been given. And for whatever reason, I was born into southern Utah, Sandy, Utah, Delta, all the places that we were born. Like, this is where we started. And so sometimes when I'm making art, I just look at whatever materials I have, and then sometimes I get that vision and you start creating. And so, like, even with my trip to Africa, I take my ADHD brain. I hadn't filed my taxes yet. Don't tell Jeff that, because he's an IRS person. Anyway, so I hadn't filed my taxes, and so I had my tax return that I could spend, which I probably would have wasted on other things, but thankfully I still had it, so I could buy my tickets to Africa. So sometimes your flaws are the most beautiful thing about you, and they still bring the magic into your life. And another thing that you need is really good materials, not the watered down tempera paint that you can barely make an image out of. You gotta get some good quality stuff. And I think one of the best materials you can have for life is the people in your life. And tonight is a testament to that. I have seriously the best friends. I'm so grateful for all of you, even just coming here tonight. But they are the biggest influence in my life. And they inspire me, they help me, they laugh with me about my stupid dating life. And they've been through me for so long. And my friend Gina here, she connected me with a lady who painted big, huge temple murals. And one day she called me and said, hey, I know someone who needs an artist to come and match paint. And it would just be a temporary position, but do you want to do that? And I thought, sure, I'll go match some paint. So I went up there, and my interview with her was a series of her bringing me a painting, sitting it down on an easel, and then bringing me a blank canvas, and then handing me a palette and saying, I need you to copy this painting. And so I sat there for 8 hours and copied the painting. And then she walked in and said, all right, that looks good. I feel good. You feel good about this? I'm like, yeah, I feel good. She's like, okay, well, you can start tomorrow. So that was like the easiest job interview of my life. It was kind of long, but, and one day she had me organize all of her reference images. Actually, by day, I mean, one day she asked me to, and it took like 2 months because she had so many reference images. And one of those binders that I had to put together was of clouds. So she handed me a box and said, I need you to organize all these clouds. So I had to go through and organize all these cloud pictures by front lit clouds, back lit clouds, side lit clouds. What did I miss there? Anyway, all the clouds, sunset, sunrise, they do look different. And so by the end of that, I just remember, because I had to drive from Provo to Wellsburg every day for 30 minutes. And after studying clouds for an entire week, 8 hours a day, I would drive home and I was like, oh, look at those clouds. They're so beautiful. And look how the light's shining through on that part. And look at the purple hue right there. And I love clouds, which is kind of funny because my grandma Chipman used to always say, oh, the glorious clouds. So that was for you, Grandma. Anyway, but I bring that up to say that as you get going in your art processes in life, the more that you study people, the more you can appreciate them and the beauty of them and understand them. And I became, so obviously I'm an artist, right? And then one day I got invited to go to New York. This was on a date. That's for a whole nother story. But he died. I didn't kill him, okay? But I was a murder suspect. And so he invites me on this day. I go out there, I end up meeting this lady, Frances. Frances invites me to go to Greece. I don't have any money for Greece. So I end up teaching art lessons. Then art lessons turns into me teaching art classes. And then I start teaching at a school. And then fast forward, now it's 11 years later, and I am dean of students. So I went from being the beloved art teacher that everybody loved and had fun with, and they'd come slough in my class. And now I'm the disciplinarian, which is such a funny joke from the universe because I am the most undisciplined person I know, and I have to enforce all the discipline. But it's also been a really beautiful experience because the more that I've gotten to know all of these kids with various backgrounds and autism, and some kids who are homeless, and some kids who have parents who are abusive, and some whose parents left them. And I look at them, and I have teachers come in and they're like, ugh, that student just drives me crazy and they're such a brat. And I love giving them some perspective and saying, well, so they actually live in a house with 10 other people and their parents are drug addicts. And they don't get a whole lot of love and attention at home. And all of a sudden you can just kind of see the teachers' faces kind of soften. And I'm like, maybe you should just like sit down by them and talk to them and get to know them, because I think they're just looking for some love. That's why they're acting out. That's why most kids act out, is because they're looking for love and attention. And truly, I think that's why any adults act out, because they're saying, look at me, love me, give me attention, somebody see me. And the more that we can get to know people and understand how they work, why they work, how they work, the more you see them for who they really are, and you can love them. And so while I was teaching art, I can teach them how to do realism, and that's great and everything, but sometimes those pictures just get kind of boring, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that looks realistic, or it doesn't. Good job, here's your grade. And then I thought, I want them to feel their art. Like, let's get them doing something they care about. So I came up with a way to go through 4 different scenarios of a painting about themselves, a painting about a difficult moment, a painting about a happy moment, and then a painting about someone that was inspirational or influential in their lives. And I would give them like a good week to work on each one. And so after a month, they all had 4 paintings to share. And so they'd come up and they'd share their 4 paintings, and we'd all guess which one was which. And then I gave them the opportunity to share what each painting meant, because we would do it in a symbolic way, and I had them meditate on the feeling of it and on like what the colors would symbolize. And it also helped take away like the pressure of having to do representational art. And so every single time I did this project, kids were crying in my class, telling their stories, whether it was happy tears about someone they loved or sad tears about a difficult moment in their life. And I thought, I think I'm onto something here. So I started doing it in art parties, and actually my friend Kate back there hired me to do it at her company. So we had 30 adults in a room all doing symbolic art therapy together and sharing things that they never would have known otherwise. And so this is where I'm gonna wrap this whole experience up. But whenever you get to share your art, I give some rules for when we critique. Number 1, we talk about what we love about the art. And number 2, we don't criticize it, we critique it, and there is a difference. When you criticize something, you're just being mean. And when you're critiquing something, I tell them, let's talk about how we could enhance or improve it. And if they're not willing to go up and show it, then we don't give them a critique. Most of the time in life, unless somebody's asking you to give you feedback, they're not going to take it. They're going to think it's criticism and not critique. And so I just encourage you in your own lives, as you look at the masterpiece of life that you've been living, what do you love about it? What can you enhance or improve? And then just enjoy the process.